Hello, friend. There was a time when I used to sit quietly in a room full of people, wanting to speak, wanting to express my ideas, my feelings, but I could not. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't know how to say in English. I was trapped inside my own silence, watching opportunities pass me by, one after another. If you have ever felt that, why nervously speak up, ashamed to make a mistake, afraid to being laughed at, then this is story for you. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. I was never born confident. I was never a fluent speaker. In fact, I struggled deeply with English heart race. My mouth would go dry and my mind would suddenly go blank. I knew the answer. I had practiced it in front of the mirror many times, but when the moment came, fear looked over. I grew up in a small town where English was not spoken much. We studied it in school, yes, but it was more about memorizing textbook answers and less about real communication. I was a good student, hardworking and sincere, but every time the English teacher asked us to speak, I would avoid eye contact silently praying I would not be chosen, and when I was, my voice would tremble and my classmates would giggle. That laughter stayed with me. It planted to a seed, doubt that grew into a forest of fear. At home, there was no environment to practice English, felt like a foreign world that I did not belong to. I watched others, more confident students, city kids, even people TV speak English is. I wondered how do they do it? What do they have that I don't? The worst part was not just that I could not speak English. It was that I started believing I would never to be able to. Slowly that belief began affecting everything else. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. I was never born confident. I was never a fluent speaker. In fact, I struggled deeply with English for years. But today I stand here not just as someone who speaks English, but as someone whose entire life has been transformed by it. This is not just a story about learning a language, it's a story of discovering freedom, confidence, and purpose. You might think English is just a subject in a school or just a tool for job, but for me it became something much bigger. It became a bridge between who I was meant to be. It helped me break the walls to fear and build a new identity, someone who dares to speak, to inspire, to lead. I promise you this. By the end of this story, you will see how English can be more than grammar and vocabulary. It can be your turning point, your new beginning. Because if someone like me, shy, unsure, and afraid, can do it, then you can too. So stay with me. What am I about to share is not just my truth. It could become your inspiration. The shocking truth, learning English did not just improve my communication, it slowly this belief began affecting everything else. I stopped raising my hand in class. I didn't apply for leadership positions or participate in competition. I avoided speaking in public and I even missed out on friendship because I was too shy to introduce myself in English. Every time I saw a job advertisement that required English communication skills, I felt disheartened and I knew I was capable. I had the skill, but the fear of the interview, the fear of speaking up, I let it hold me back. And that's when I realized something painful. It was not just about language anymore, it was about my self worth. I started doubting myself in every area of life because of one thing: I could not speak English. One memory in particular skill breaks my heart. It was a college seminar. I guest speaker from abroad had come, and the professor asked if anyone would like to welcome him with a few words. I wanted to. I had always wanted to something like that, but I froze. I didn't raise my heart, and I just watched as someone else walked up, smiled confidently, and spoke. The applause they received echoed like a clap with my own silence. That night I cried, not because someone else spoke, but because I knew deep down that I could have to. I just didn't have the courage, and that lack of courage came from years thinking I was not good enough. The most difficult thing about struggling with English was not just the language, it was the isolation, the embarrassment, the fear of being judged. It was hearing people whisper, "Oh, he does not know English." If he that defined my intelligence, it was pretend I didn't want to speak when deep in I was attending a job interview for a position I was truly excited about. I was not high paying job for a fancy role, but it was something I had been working toward for a long time. I had the qualification, the knowledge and the passion. I had prepared my answers, my native language, confident that I could impress the panel. But I had not expected this. The interview panel consisted of two people, one local and the other a foreign client who spoke only English. As soon as English speaking interviewer introduced myself, my heart sank. I tried to smile, but I could feel the tension building of my chest. Then came the first question: "Can you tell us about yourself?" It was a basic question, something I had heard many times before. I had even practiced it once or twice. But at that time, sitting in the chair with eyes watching the silence surrounding me, I froze. My mind went blank, words got stuck in my thought. I managed to say a few broken sentences mixing English with my mother tongue, but it was obvious I was struggling. I will never forget the look on their faces. It was not cruel, it was not mocking, it was just disappointed, and somehow that was worse. I left the room feeling crushed. I knew I had lost the opportunity not because I was not good enough for the job, but because I could not express my thoughts in English. I walked home with tears in my eyes, each steps heavier than the last. That night I sat alone in my room, feeling like a failure, looked at myself in the mirror and asked a question I had never dared to ask before. How long will you keep running away from English? And in the moment, something shifted. I realized I had two choices: keep living in fear or start fighting for the life I truly wanted. I chose to fight. That job rejection became my turning point. It was painful, yes, but it opened my eyes. I could not longer let fear control me. I had dreams to chase, and English was the bridge I needed to cross. I didn't know how I would do it. I didn't have a perfect plan. I have something even more powerful. I had a decision. I decided that from that day on, I would no longer avoid English. I would face it one step at a time, no matter how many mistakes I made, no matter how many people laughed or judged. I would keep going because I knew one thing for sure. I never wanted to feel that helpless again. That single decision to stop running and start learning changed everything. I didn't make things easier overnight, but it gave me the courage to begin. And sometimes that's all you need. The next morning, after that heartbreaking interview, I woke up with a heavy but determined heart. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I could not wait anymore. I had made a promise to myself. I would learn English, not for anyone else, but for me. I began with what I had. No fancy app, no expensive course, no foreign teacher, just a second hand grammar book, a notebook, and the internet on my old mobile phone. Then I started. At first, it was frustrating. I opened the book and stared at the pages full of rules, tenses, articles, preposition, and I felt overwhelmed. I thought, how am I supposed to remember all this? But then I reminded myself, I don't have to master in all in a day. I just have to begin. So I started small. I chose 10 simple English sentences and wrote them down. I practiced them aloud every day. I stood in front of a mirror and spoke to myself. At first, I felt ridiculous. I stumbled my words, my pronunciation was all wrong, and my tongue refused to cooperate, but I kept going. 15 minutes in a day, that became my routine. Just 15 minutes of speaking practice, no matter what. I didn't care if I made mistake. I didn't care if I sounded silly. I just knew I had to do it. I had spent too many years being silent. Now it was time to hide my voice. Every day I watched a short English video, sometimes a TED talk, sometimes a YouTube lesson. I had listened carefully and tried to repeat sentences. I paused, rewound, and mimicked the speakers. It was hard, very hard, but slowly I began to catch the rhythm of the language. I began to feel the words. At night, I had write a small paragraph in English about my day. It was full of spelling mistakes and broken grammar, but I didn't stop because for the first time was talking action, and the action felt powerful. Of course, there were bad days. Days when I felt like giving up, days when I thought, what's the point? Doubted myself constantly, but every time I thought about quitting, I remembered the pain of the interview, the way I felt when I could not answer a simple question. That memory became my motivation. Eventually, I mustered the courage to speak to someone. My first English conversation was with a shopkeeper who understood basic English. It was just a few sentences, but my hands were shaking. Still, I did it. Then I joined an online English speaking groups. It was terrifying. Strangers from different parts of the world, all speaking in English. I was nervous. What if they laughed at me? What if I said something wrong? But something surprising happened. They didn't laugh, they listened, they encouraged me, and they understood me. And for the first time, I felt like I belong. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, friends.